Hello and welcome to Prague. Behind me you can see the Charles Bridge, one of the most famous tourist bridges in the world, surely. But it also represents the epicenter of the Czech spirit. And if it could talk, wow, it would have such stories to tell. For example, did you know what the Charles Bridge and free-range chickens have in common? Well, if you wait until the end of this film, you'll find out. Let's go and discover more. Behind me, Charles IV, the king under whom construction of this medieval bridge commenced, and of course today it bears his name. Today we're going to find out why you shouldn't walk over it quite as quickly as most tourists do, because it's full of history and it's a bridge that really talks to the spirit. We're at the eastern end of the bridge to start our tour, and this is the Old Town Bridge Tower. Now it's actually an original part of the bridge, and it has the numerical palindrome 135797531 inscribed on the walls. That was the exact time in, let's get this right, if it's a palindrome, 1357, on the 9th of July, when the foundation stone was laid. In medieval times there were beliefs that these numbers had magical powers. So, quite an extraordinary start for the bridge, and no wonder it has so many extraordinary magical tales to tell. Although the Charles Bridge is a medieval bridge, it wasn't the first bridge on this site. There was a wooden bridge which collapsed in floods in the 1150s, and after that the first 21-arch stone bridge called the Judith Bridge was built, and that collapsed in the middle of the 14th century because of floods again. Then finally this bridge was built, and clearly it remains with us, although much changed over the ages, but it remains with us to the modern day. Originally, the bridge was known as the Stone Bridge because it was the only one of its kind in Prague, and after that it was called the Prague Bridge. It only became known as the Charles Bridge in the early 19th century and effectively was recognised as a landmark which represented Czech revivalist national pride. That seems particularly appropriate today because I'm filming on the 17th of November 2024, which is actually the 35th anniversary of the Velvet Revolution, which brought freedom to the Czech and Slovak peoples. Despite the cheerful music from a busker nearby, the story of the crucifix behind me is not entirely edifying. In 1696 there was a court case brought against a Jewish merchant called Elias Backhofen, and he was found guilty of anti-Christian behaviour. As a result, he had to pay for a Hebrew inscription to be built into the crucifix, which quoted the prophet Isaiah, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of our multitude." This was intended as an insult to the Jewish population. Anyone who visits this bridge, whatever the time of day or night, will find thousands of other people who've had the same idea. But again, quite extraordinary, up until 1965, cars and vehicles could quite happily cross the bridge. Progress, pedestrianisation in Czechoslovakia, just like the rest of the world. Although these days you hear a lot of laughter on Charles Bridge, it has been a place of significant misery as well. In the Middle Ages, this is where executions took place, and also in the reign of Charles IV. If, for example, you were a market trader who'd perhaps misweighed some vegetables and sold them at the wrong price, well, you would get put in a wicker basket and put down under the water as a punishment. You were, thankfully, brought back up eventually, but I would imagine that next time somebody went to get the vegetables, the weights were right. One of the most horrible stories of all dates back to 1393 and relates to John of Nepomuk. Now, he refused to divulge secrets of the Queen of Bohemia's personal life to Wenceslas IV, and his punishment for that was to be thrown into the water here, where sadly he drowned. The story goes that once he was thrown into the water, he miraculously lingered on the surface and 5 gold stars formed around his head. Naturally, this was viewed as miraculous, and sometime later he was canonized as a martyr. Whether the story is entirely true or not is open to some debate, but it doesn't stop hordes of tourists coming to rub the little bronze plaque where there's a likeness of the scene of his martyrdom. They also then moved to a scene next to it of a little dog and rubbed that too. But apparently the only reason that's shiny is because some students decided to brighten it up and mislead hordes of tourists. In fact, I imagine that most tourists who rub the panels have no idea why they're doing it. When I first came to Prague, all of the statues on the bridge were black, covered in soot. Some of them still are, but most of them have been restored and look wonderful. However, I'm not necessarily looking at reality, because most of the statues are actually removed from the bridge and are in store or on display even elsewhere, in Vltava for example. So although the bridge may be original, a lot of what you're looking at is actually copies, and that is to protect them, because it's not unusual for Prague to flood, and the statues are made of sandstone, and floods and sandstone don't go well together, so probably a wise decision by the custodians of the bridge. Many visitors to Prague are under the misapprehension that this is the oldest stone bridge in Europe, and actually that's not the case at all. There are older bridges in Czechia, and also this very bridge was modelled on an older bridge from Nuremberg in Germany. Myths also abound about objects being secretly buried in the bridge. One such story, for example, is about a golden sword, which is supposed to be deeply interred in the bridge, and at some time in the future, so the myth goes, at a time of national strife, a hero will come and reclaim the sword from inside the bridge. Well, renovations in 2008 searched the bridge pretty thoroughly, and sadly this object wasn't found, and none of the others as well that are talked about. A big disappointment for those who still hold true to these tales. That's not to say that there isn't a statue of a golden sword on the bridge. In fact, here it is, and it marks the end of the bridge on the Old Town side and was a reminder to everybody that tolls and fees could be collected here. My favourite tale relates to the mortar in the bridge, and we're back to our free-range chickens. Well, it's said that when the bridge was built, all of the villages in Czechia were asked to send eggs, and that the egg was mixed with the mortar in order to make it stronger. There's still debate about that to this day. But one interesting point is that there was one village which sent hard-boiled eggs, Vltava, and 650 years later, that's still joked about today. If you've enjoyed this film about Charles Bridge, then I'd be so grateful if you could please like it, subscribe, and ding that bell for notifications. Thank you, and see you again soon.